Hi everyone, welcome back to the introductory Python tutorials for image processing. In the last couple of videos, we looked at autoencoders. And again, a quick summary, autoencoders, by definition, they take an input and they try to reconstruct that input. And we are trying to trick these autoencoders by providing an input, like an image, for example, and the expected output to be something else. And by doing that, we're trying to use autoencoders or customize autoencoders for certain applications like image colorization or denoising. And our focus right now is to see if that can be used for semantic segmentation. And in the last video, we realized that maybe not. I mean, the results look good on first look, but there is a loss of spatial information, which is very important for semantic segmentation, because after all, we're trying to classify every pixel in our image. So in this video, let's learn about units and how they are different from an autoencoder, or maybe I should have phrased it as how they are similar to autoencoder. Like, what is the limitation of autoencoder and how do units fix that limitation? Let's understand that. So first of all, let's have a quick look at our autoencoder. Again, a large image progressively goes down in size, but then goes up in number of features. Yeah, here 128, 256, 512, and so on. And from this bottleneck, it's going back up to the image's original size. So if you provide it with a image like this as input, and if your expected output is the same, then it reconstructs the input back. But if you provide your expected output as this, then it is expected to reconstruct something of this sort. But then this is what we saw that from the last video, right? So this is what we expect, and this is what we saw, which looks great on first look. It got the colors right, it got everything right, it got most of the spatial locations right, except it's not very accurate when it comes to the spatial. You see, everything looks like a bit blurred. It almost looks like this is Gaussian filtered version of this above image. This is fuzzy, rounded objects. That is again happening because by the time you get down here, it lost all of its spatial information that you have from here. At conv 1, you have very good spatial information, right? Conv 2, a little bit. Conv 3, but then up to conv 5, you lost that information. So how do we gain that? How do we retain this spatial information? This is what unit solves, again, as you probably realized. So let's look at the autoencoder in a nice abstract way, right? Not look at, make this as complicated as this. Autoencoder, again, is anything that goes from a large size, small, and then goes back up in convolutional layers. So we have this encoder part, and the remaining is the decoder, right? So how to retain spatial information? Well, what if we add the spatial information from here to the next part, to the decoder layers? What if we can take encoder spatial information, add to decoder, right? So this is exactly what I'm talking about. Take the spatial information, add it to the feature information that you have in the decoder. When I say add spatial information, I mean take the features from the encoder, add it to the decoder. This is exactly. Now let's make these arrows straight. That's all I'm trying to do right now in a graphical way. What happens if I make these straight? I'm going to bend this in a U shape. Yeah, that's exactly what a unit is. So my encoder is still right there. I just made these connections straight, So this is a bit bent with this bottleneck sitting down here. So it's exactly the same diagram, by the way. It's a different representation, so I can justify calling it unit. This part is basically our encoder that you see here. And this part is basically our decoder. The only difference between this and this is the concatenation of these inputs from these layers. That's it. This is, in a nutshell, what a unit is. You can read the paper to get a lot more information about this, and this is the paper. Convolutional Networks for Biomedical Image Segmentation from 2015. Even though this is from 5-6 years ago, the concept still rules, I should say. This is still the best way for semantic segmentation. Now, just to understand this a bit better, this is the original image that they actually published in their paper with input images 572 by 572 and so on. But it doesn't matter. Just have a closer look. In this representation, going from the input, you have two convolution layers. The blue line, the blue arrow, represents a 3 by 3 convolution operation with a ReLU activation function. Okay, so each blue line is a convolution, 2D conv or 3D if you want to extend this to 3D, but let's just say this is a convolution followed by ReLU activation, convolution with ReLU activation. After this, you're doing max pooling, 2 by 2 max pooling. What happens when you do max pooling? 2 by 2, the input image size goes down. So instead of your input image being 570 or something, now it is 284 by 284 right there. Okay, and the number of filters are going up from 64 to 128 to 256 to 512. Exactly the same structure we saw as part of our autoencoder. Okay, and the green arrows represent up convolution. This can be upscaling, upsampling, sorry, or up convolution, conv 2D transpose. And these are the green arrows. And then you see the blue arrows that are conv, both here as part of decoder and here as part of encoder. And then you get your output segmented map. Now let's look at this for 256 by 256 because it makes it easy. We have been working with 256 images, so let's look at the same structure here. Okay, so my input image is 256 by 256, one channel. Let's just say my input image is not color, it's grayscale. I mean, it can be 3, but for now, let's say 1. After the first 2 convolution layers, I have 64 filters right there. And then I perform max pooling 2 by 2, which means my 256 becomes 128. So this dimension is 128 by 128. And then we perform convolutional operation with how many filters now? 128 filters. And then max pooling, which means my 128 becomes 64. And then I double the number of filters to 256. And I do that all the way up to down here where I have 1024. Features and only 16 by 16 in terms of my image dimensions. Now I want to go up. From 1024, I go to 512. Why? Because I have up convolution of 2 by 2, meaning, or think of this as upsampling. Okay, sorry, the size here would be 32 by 32. This is what I meant. Yeah, so from 16 by 16, my size would be 32 by 32 because I have an upsampling of 2 by 2. Okay. And I'm going from 1024 filters to 512 and then 2 convolutions. Same thing repeating. Up convolution, so your size goes from 32 to 64 and then convolutions and so on. Now, where does the concatenation come into picture? So let's just look at this because it's not too busy up there, right? So you have, after this operation, you have 128 features right there. Okay, from 256, you're going to 128. But then we are adding the 128 that are coming from here to these right there. Okay, so that's what we are concatenating, and then comes our convolution operation, and then comes our upsampling right there, and the convolution operation with a number of filters of 128, obviously, right? So here you have 128 plus 128, but then the convolution right there, we are saying that, hey, convert that into 128 filters. So after the convolution operation, you have 128, and the image size is 128, 128. So this blue, the ones that are represented in blue right there, they are representing the features coming from the decoder, and the one that is transparent box, like the white box right here, they are the features coming from here. That means this white box contains spatial information that's much needed for us, and this blue box contains the feature information that's needed to understand the features. I hope this makes sense. So we are doing exactly the same on the way out. And finally, because this is a one channel image, again, I'm outputting here, or my Y in this case has one channel. So that's my output right there. How do you code it? Very simple, exactly the way you see it here. Excuse me. My input is 256, 256.1. That's my input. Then comes 2 convolution operations, right? With 3 by 3 and ReLU. Conv 2D, conv 2D. How many filters? 64 filters, right? For my operation. 64 filters, 64 filters. 3 by 3, you can just type 3 here or 3 by 3. It's up to you. It accepts both. Keras accepts both. That's 3 by 3. That's what this is indicating. And then activation is relu. I'm going to do padding equals to same. So my output is the same size. Output here is the same size as this input, 256, 256. I don't think the original paper did that. That's why there is a change in size from 572 to 570 to 568. That's what I think. In our case, let's just put output padding equals to same so we don't lose any information there. Okay, so these are the two conv layers. Then comes max pooling, right? 2 conv, then comes max pooling. Of what? 2 by 2. Max pooling 2D of pool size 2 by 2. Next, 2 convolution layers, 128, max pooling. 128, max pooling. Then 256, max pooling. Okay, so this part should be pretty straightforward, the encoder part. And this is the base 1024 right there. What do you do with this 1024 now? We need to go the other way around. Okay, so with that as input, with B1 as input, right there, that's my input. Okay, I would like to do a convolution operation, right? I would like to a convolution operation, excuse me, and then concatenate. Concatenate what? S4 and D1. What is S4 and D1? So, oh, I'm not putting, well, I'm concatenating this and this together. In the next step, once you concatenate, 2 convolution operations, con2d of 512, yeah, of 512 right there. Then comes what? Another convolution operation, okay, on D1. So the output here, another convolution right there. You see up convolution 2 by 2, and then you concatenate these two. That's exactly what we do here. Concatenate those two, and then perform 2 more convolution operations, con. So this repeats all the way up till you get your output. So I hope this this clears any doubts that you have about UNet, but at least establishes a nice basement for us to understand units as we go along in the next few videos. Let's jump to the code, copy paste this, and see just model.summary. Okay, so here you go. All I did is imported the relevant libraries here, by the way, from keras.layers. In fact, a good practice if you're working on TensorFlow 2 or later is doing TensorFlow.keras.layers, because that's probably the best way to deal with that. And one thing you have to remember is if you do that for all Keras. Okay, you cannot mix and match. It throws some weird error and you'll spend all day trying to figure out what that error means. So from keras.layers, we are getting con2d, max pooling, upsampling, concatenate. Remember, these are all the things that we need. I'm also importing con2d transpose in case you want to replace your upsampling with this, or just to do some testing. Batch normalization, dropout, and I'm not even sure if we are using lambda, but I'm not using lambda right there. But let's go ahead and import these. I think we need to connect. And for now, the runtime can be, you don't need GPU because we are not going to run anything we're not going to train a model. So let's go ahead and import our libraries. And then this code is exactly what I showed you as part of the presentation, right? I mean, you have con2d. Now, I correct myself. This is not exactly. In between the convolution layers, I added a dropout layer. The whole point is I want to show you that it's, the structure, the original structure shows you con, max pooling. You can add batch normalization as part of in between these columns. You can add, I hate this thing. You can add dropout, just as a regularization term. So you can add some of these in between, but the overall structure is you have con, max pooling, con, max pooling. I'm adding dropout in between, con, max pooling, and expansive path. In this example, instead of just performing convolution operation, I think this is important. So let me switch back. So I can show you this right here, right? Here we are using con max pooling. In my example, between the convolution layers, I added dropout just to make sure my model doesn't overfit. That's it. In the expansion path, I did convolution operation and then did the upsampling right there, okay, to that size. I did convolution operation, upsampling to that specific size, followed by the convolution operation, right? So conv and then upsample. When you do conv2D transpose, the conv is right there and the transpose is built in. Yeah, so you don't do this in two different steps. So let's jump back. So there you go. So here I have conv2D transpose, and then I'm concatenating. Oh God, the help. And then I'm concatenating, and then another conv2D, and then another conv2D, right? Very similar. So this is how we built, and then I'm trying to print out model.summary. And let us go ahead and print the summary out, and there you go. Here is our unit model. So building a unit is, once you understand the structure, this is very simple actually. In fact, you can use specific functions to define the unit. Here, if you see what is repeating, conv2D dropout, conv2D max pooling, conv2D dropout, conv2D max pooling. So this entire thing is one block. This entire thing is another block. This is another block, right? So you can define a function only for the convolution block and then just change the number of filters. That's it, because that's the only thing that's changing, right? So if you want a cleaner code, that's a much better way of doing things. Okay, so this is a quick introduction of the unit in general. I keep promising to talk about upsampling versus conv2D transpose. I promise that I'll do that in the next video. I thought it's very important for you to understand this first, so you know what we mean by upsampling and conv2D transpose, and then talk about these two. So please stay tuned for the next video and subscribe to this channel. Thank you.